As some of you know, this is the Hog House, and according to the title on this, you're gonna see how we upgraded the video system a little bit and how we did that, and how the television can go all the way right up into the rafters. And it is done just in time for an event today. So we're having the wild game feed here in the Hog House, and I will just walk you around real quick. In the back room, the back studio is now set up so that we can have about 8 or 10 people eating back here. And we've got some stuff out here. Got some family here. This is where this table is going to be chock full of food, and there's already some wild game here. Some cheesy potatoes, some venison cowboy beans, some venison meatballs, and a bunch more stuff coming as well. Anyway, we're going to see a bunch of people coming up here shortly, and I'm just glad that I got this project done. And if you want to see how it was accomplished, and I changed all the wires, did some 110 wiring, all that, and I love this thing, and I love the new soundbar. So feel free to watch. Hello, I'm Jimbo, and I'm here in the Hog House. And if you're not sure what the Hog House is, feel free to go to my YouTube channel, Jimbo, South Dakota, and you can search Tour of the Hog House. And that will give you an overview of what this building was and what it's become. We've been here 32 years, and it's turned out pretty good. Anyway, I have come up with an upgraded project. Currently, there is a projector right up here that you can't see, and that obviously projects onto this screen. It covers most of the screen, like about out to these edges, and you know, probably 7/8 or so of the size of that screen. The problem is, it's daylight hours. The projector's old, the bulb is old, and there's windows here that aren't covered, some of them are. And some of them are covered because also on that channel, just as a side note, this is called the Hog House, and there's a podcast called the Hog House Chronicles podcast. This bar over to the right is one of the stages that we use, and then if you can see that doorway underneath, there's the blacked out studio back there. And it's a lot of military people, some people I've interviewed across the nation as I've driven around, and it's just, I have a lot of fun doing it. I do it for the family and friends of the people that are on there. But anyway, side note, Hog House Chronicles podcast, this is the Hog House, and we need to upgrade the video. I've also got some audio things that I need to upgrade. I ran a disc jockey unit for probably about 20 years doing bars and weddings and all that kind of stuff. So we've got a pretty good audio system in here, but I'm going to have to find a way, there's multiple ways to do it, but I'll find the best way to connect a brand new 75-inch TV that is going to go here to replace this system. And part of it is, like I was saying about the windows, the projector's old. Sometimes the picture's a little bit dim, especially if you're watching movies and it's a night scene. So decided to make the upgrade, and it is going to be right here in front of this screen, and I'm going to try to build a bracket with tubing to go ahead, and the TV can be in the down position, but then it can also be lifted up and locked up so that it's out of the way. And so I've got some pieces in the garage. I'll show you the quick diagram that I came up with. I'm not an engineer, I'm not an electrician, any of that stuff. I'm not a mechanic, but I just do the best I can. So I've already run some wire to get a new outlet over there in order to power the system, because right now there's power right here where the projector is. So I've ran the wire, and I'm going to take you into the garage and show you the pieces that I got yesterday. Got about $45 worth of steel. And so shortly here, we're just going to leave the Hog House, go to the garage, and I'll show you the pieces. And I am open to all comments, of course, and anything that can help me out. All right, we're gonna head to the garage. This is my original chicken scratching, trying to get this thing figured out. At first I was going to start with a 6-foot inner tube, but I quickly figured out that it should probably be an 8-foot, just so they don't cut myself short. And this shows basically the TV with the standard mounting screw holes. And you can see, like I said, that's about a third of the way down the TV. This inner tube, of course, would go down farther there. But this is just more of a close-up of the outer tube where it's mounted to the plate, 6 mounting holes, and the top little notch to hold the TV in the upper position, and then the slit to get to the bottom position, a little bit of a T so you can swing it left and right once it's there. So this here is a diagram of the rafters. The shed, it's basically, it's open rafter. I didn't mention that before. But the inner tube would go, my guess is probably a little bit lower. Hopefully that way maybe we can put the spring in there to assist the lift and not have it be able to drop straight down under its own weight. But the rod on the bottom would be, like I said, to hold on to it, to pull it down, push it up. I'm looking at about 26.5 inches of travel through here is my initial guess. So this is the up position, and you can see it's down below the truss a little bit, but it is plenty high for not hitting your head on it and stuff. This would be the down position, and it'd be 3 inches below the stringer. The rod down there, the rod's 2 inches below the TV, and that whole thing in the down position would still be a little over 58 inches from the floor. So just some quick calculations on there, and we'll see what happens. So I'm in the garage now, but earlier my friend Don, friend and neighbor, he's a great fabricator, he's good at everything he does, and we started looking at the steel that I had. We were in the hog house putting some things up, taking some measurements, and it just wasn't going to work. And part of that was I decided I wanted the TV to be higher, like up to the rafters, and also there just was not going to be enough clearance for that long tube that I was showing you that was going to have the slit. So you have that for the travel, the inner pipe for that travel. It was just going to be too much, even though I had 6 feet of room above there. So he had a much better idea. But first I'll show you this is the bracket that the TV is going to hang on. And this 2x6 wasn't quite wide enough. The U-bolts just barely got there. So I'm going to make a new one of those by ripping a 2x8 and get this remounted on there. Probably paint this, make it look a little better, even though it'll be on the back of the TV. And so that was the bracket. And he had decided that, or he showed me a way that he had utilized something at his place, much shorter pipe, shorter plate, but having to where on the top of the rod, and this is the inner, I keep using different terms for it, but the inner pipe, I'll say, there's a spot for a bolt up here, so this will end up going in here, so it's much shorter, as you can see, comparing it to the drawings. So in order for the TV to be in the down position, we're just going to have a bolt there, and then it'll ride on that. And then the TV can turn wherever you need it while hanging in the down position. But for the up position, see if I can get this here, there's a stud down here that just goes up into a notch, over and down. So it will hang from there. So that makes it so you don't need near as much travel by having it designed that way. And oh, by the way, on the bottom here, if you can see it, there's the handle. I got some 5/8 rod. So that will be at the bottom, 2 inches below the TV screen in order to lift the TV up and down. So that is what the hardware ended up being, which is better idea than what I had. And like I said, I'm not smart at that stuff at all. But this is the wooden bracket that I built to put above the rafters, and it'll sit on the rafters. And it may not have to be this tall, because I was going to try to have a spring on here so that the pipe going up and down, as it goes down, it would stretch a spring. But the rod goes so high that there won't be room for a spring on top. So he also had an idea of maybe a pulleyed counterweight. So I think we may end up doing that. I haven't talked to him about it again, but I'm going to cut just a little bit off the top here because it's too close to the peak. But I'm just going to get this painted up, and this portion will be bolted right about there is where the measurement worked, and then get that all, we got to, since we tested it now, got to do the final welding here and things before I paint this. But I will be painting this, I will paint this pipe, and then I'm also going to paint the wood. So I'm going to be doing that as soon as I'm done filming right here, and we will go from there. Okay, so here's where we're at. My buddy Don came over and we talked about things a little bit more, and he had a much better plan than I did for the hardware. But basically, and I cut this down quite a bit, this is going to be sitting up on the rafters. So one will be about here and one will be about here. And then this is going to hang out about a third of the way into the gap. And so the mechanism is going to be mounted on here. And this is the plate and tube that Don came up with. So then you go to the television portion of it. This is the bracket that the television will hang from. And this is the board that I'll get everything lined up and use these lag bolts to attach that to the board. And I have some eyelets that I may end up using as a counterweight. I talked about maybe using a spring on the top, but there's not gonna be enough room for that. So I might end up doing a counterweight with eyelets, pulleys, and a rope and a counterweight that will, as I push the TV up, the counterweight will come down and just take some of that weight off so that it's not quite so heavy. And to mount this wooden piece, I forgot to say this, to mount this wooden piece up there, I've got these big lag screws, or I've got these huge squared off U-bolts that I may end up using to attach that up there. Everything's going to be nice and solid. There's not going to be any safety issues at all on that. So I believe that is where we're at. So I'll probably start with getting this attached to here, get the U-bolts in there, and oh, by the way, the U-bolts are what is going to hold this whole apparatus to the rod itself. So that'll be hard bolted onto the bottom, and the bottom of the TV, like I said before, will be just a couple inches above that handle. So I believe that is where we're at. So I'm going to start putting things together. basically I got the plate put on the mounting block. I used a 2x8 instead of a 2x6, and got the U-bolts on there, and I think I have it at the spot that I need to have it on the bar. Put the outer tube around the inner tube or pipe, and put the bolt on top, so that's what it's hanging on right now. So I did a little bit of leveling up there, and it's good enough where it's at for now. This is just to test it. And I have the mounting bracket, if you want to call it, the mounting block up there. I don't have all the final bolts and screws into that either yet. That's to come. But I did a little measuring here, and the top of the television is about 25 25 inches above the top of the bracket. So that puts it about there. That's about as high as I would want it. So I think we're really close. I'm really thankful for my buddy Don. Like I said, pretty smart guy, fabricates well, and he's got a good mind for this stuff. So I'm gonna see him tonight at a social event, so I'm sure we're gonna talk about it a little bit. I'm gonna be quitting for the day here, but I think we're pretty close. But I definitely will not be trying to hang that television on here by myself. That's a 75 incher, you know, I don't know, maybe it's 55, 60 pounds, something like that, but need to have a guy on each side just to get her set up there safely. So anyway, I'm pretty happy with how it's going so far, and I'm gonna go talk to Don tonight and see where we go from here. Well, I'm back in the Hog House now. It is an extremely cold day, and I've been taking my time with this project, so it's been a little while since I filmed a segment trying to put this video together. But as you can see, the TV is mounted, and I've got it turned a little bit because of the reflection. I've got the long RCA cables pulled out, got the projector pulled out, the new HDMI cables are installed, the antenna cables are installed, the 110 wiring is installed up here. I'm going to modify that just a little bit yet because I want to illuminate the flags that are up here too. I'll talk about that later. But anyway, I had to do some experimenting with the audio, and I think may have mentioned in the past that I ran a disc jockey unit for about 20 years. So I've got all the gear over there, and it's nice to run audio through that. Now this TV obviously has Bluetooth, and the mixer over there has Bluetooth, but it was a little weak, so it wasn't really connecting very well. I've got an aftermarket Bluetooth that I've got hooked to the mixer itself, and that works really good. One thing about it though is there's just a fraction of a second delay. So some things it doesn't really matter if that's the case. Movies and such, you like to not have it have a delay like that. It's ever so slight, but it's still there. So I also did some testing with one of the HDMI cables that I have, and I bought a little box to convert the ARC or the eARC HDMI output, which allows you to extract audio. To take it back to the stereo over there, had to be converted to RCA plugs, and it just didn't work very well. It introduced a hum. So having it hardwired like that ended up not working. So I tried all those things before I decided to just go ahead and buy a sound bar, because this thing obviously has its own speakers. Not going to be enough for a room of this size. It's about 28 by 40. And so I did finally, at the end, decide to get a sound bar. So I got a Vizio that matches a TV. It's a 5.1, got a little surround sound and a sub. And so I'll talk about that in a little bit. The TV, we do have it set now so it has the range of motion that it needs to go up and down. The only problem is if I mount the sound bar beneath here, it might extend far enough that it still might hit the rafters when I go to lock it in the up position. So with that being said, I might have to modify a little bit more up there, and I'll be tackling that in a little bit. But also, the unit ended up being pretty heavy. Like I said, I think this is, I'd have to look it up, 55, 60 pounds. You've got the steel involved, and now the sound bar will add a little bit of weight as well. The pipe going within the other pipe, I don't really want to grease it up because of a bunch of, you know, dust and stuff can can eventually, it can get dirty. When it does get warm in here, grease could drop down and stuff. Don't want to mess with that. I don't know if silicone spray would help or not, but I did end up making the decision with help from a couple friends to just make a counterweight. So I'm just figuring that, let's just say for easy numbers, this is 80 pounds when it's all outfitted. That might be a little heavy. But anyway, I would probably try the counterweight to be like 60 pounds. So it does take a little pressure to get this up and down, but it would be doable with just one person. And also with the height here, instead of using a stool or a chair to grab this handle in the back to go ahead and put it up, my buddy Don, I mentioned him before, he mentioned just having a stick made that would fit right into here. And he had a comical line on there. He says, it's pretty hard to fall off a stick that you're holding in your hands. Being over 60 years old, I definitely took that to heart. And I want to make things as safe as possible, including having a counterweight hanging over people's heads. And I'll put a little, I looked up, got something in my eye. But anyway, there's these white ropes here. Sorry if there's some reflection when I put this TV back straight. But there's ropes in the back, and they are into some lag eyelets, which I might change to bolts, we'll see. But anyway, it's got enough pressure to hold the counterweight, at least for now. So the ropes go up into two pulleys up there, separate pulleys, and then over a couple sections, and there's a couple more pulleys there. So then the counterweight will go up and down between these two rafters. Now I definitely don't want to have any safety issues. I need to design it yet, and I need to see how I can make it safe. So if by chance anything would break, that it wouldn't fall and hit somebody. So I'll still be looking into that, on how to design that, and got to just make sure that everything's safe. Don't want to do anything stupid. So anyway, we have a lot of people in here, a lot of events, and this TV, we've had a couple events where we use it already. We've left it in the down position, but I need to go ahead and experiment with counterweights because I just finished the last two pulleys up there about an hour ago. So I went in the house, ate a little lunch, and came back out to start thinking about this and find a safe way to play around with some counterweights. And I will be starting fairly low with the weight just to see what it does with the TV. So anyway, that's what I've been working on very slowly, and we'll see how it goes from here. So as you saw, I tested out a counterweight back there, just used the center block. Seemed to be plenty of counterweight, which is a little less than what I thought it was going to be. So the Vizio 5.1 soundbar SE, including subwoofer and 2 surround speakers, which are the rear surround. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this up and see what's in here. standard paperwork. This will be the subwoofer. And of course, like all speakers nowadays, they're smaller, much smaller than they used to be. All right, so there's your standard sub, and I believe it's a 4-inch. Has plenty of movement. That's what creates the bass, and it is also ported, so a lot of your sound comes out there. Then you have your AC power, because this is wireless to the soundbar itself, and so you have 110 power, internal amplifier, and then your surround speakers get plugged in right there. And now the sound bar. And as you can see, sound bars really aren't that big, which should work for me as far as the amount of space needed underneath the television and above the rafters. Now, in the hardware here, I'm sure we're going to find it. It has these slits here, and there's 2 little feet, I believe. I'm not sure if you call them feet, but that's what they look like. They'll screw into the bottom of the television, and so these will just slide right in these channels, right in, and it should lock in place under the television. It also has ways to mount to the wall if you needed to. And it has some pretty fancy sound system to it, the Dolby Atmos system, DTS-X. Has a USB connector and your standard HDMI, which will plug directly into the television, which will get rid of that delay in the audio that I was talking about earlier. Gonna have to get my knife out for this. I was looking for the other speaker, but they're obviously a little smaller even than what I thought. So each one's only that big. And those are the rear surround sound. Yes, so all it has is just one little RCA plug in there that'll plug into the sub. Has 4 little soft feet if you just have them sitting somewhere. Now, like I said, these would be the rear surround, and I'll probably get these mounted up into the rafters, pointing downward a little bit. Which also means the sub, I plan on trying that up in the rafters as well. Nice safe way to be up there. Not block the bass, and see if that works just as well as having a subwoofer on the floor. So we'll see. All right, there you go for this, the surrounds, the sub, and the sound bar. And they always give you the assorted wires and hardware for however you want to mount your soundbar. So I will rip this open off camera and see what I've got. Well, as you just saw in the last segment, I put the sub and the 2 rear surround speakers back here. That was just to test them out because it was wirelessly hooked to the system, the sound bar up there, and the rear surrounds, as I mentioned, are plugged right into the sub. So I was able to test the system, and it sounded pretty good, actually much better than I thought. And so then the next day, which is yesterday, I came in here and I mounted the sub up just on the upper part of the rafters there, or on the top of the stringers. And I didn't mount or make brackets for the rear surround speakers. I may do it later, I'm not sure, but I have a shelf unit on each side here, so I just loosely ran the wires over and hooked them up there. So then I turned it on and checked the sound system again, and with the sub up top there, it really does sound good. And like I said, I ran a disc jockey unit for 20 years, so I've got big Electro Voice subwoofers here, JBL stage monitors up there, Carver amplifiers, just a lot of good sounding equipment, but I was very pleased with the sound of the sound bar. Things are smaller, they sound bigger, and very pleased with it. So this over here is the shelf where I put one of the little speakers. And then this shelf over here, same thing, right by the John Wayne cup. And then up over here is the sub. And then the wood, moving around here. So I just made a hole in the bottom so the sound from the bottom part of the sub could come through. And then, as you might be able to see here, I'm not sure if I'm showing it, it has the wires for the surround sound speakers, but also a port so that bass comes out the front too. So then that will bounce off the peak back here, and that bass just goes everywhere. So as I said, just very pleased with the sound. It doesn't have any of the delay. I'm basically gonna just paint that wood so it matches the rafters a little more. I'll just leave those speakers on the shelves for now. If I decide later to hang it from the rafters, it'll just be a fun little project. So this back part of the Hog House, I'm calling her done. And this next segment here will be the last one, and I'm gonna show you how the TV bracket turned out. Okay, here we are in the final segment. Thanks for staying this long. The TV is fully mounted. It has a sound bar underneath. I did some zip tying with the wires. The audio video wires come up this side. The 110 volt wires go up this side. And like I said, I got them zip tied together. I could have maybe held the slack with some springs up there to try to keep them up out of the way when it's in the up position where you wouldn't be able to see them a little bit below the rafters. But I think that might put a little bit of pressure on the connections themselves. So I don't know if I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do it for right now. Now the counterweight is still just a big cinder block with a few more weights added to it. And like I said, I'm going to make that safe. I'm going to use some different weights. I'm not sure what yet. I'm going to have them safety tied together. I'm also going to make something, like I said before, right on the top of the stringers or something. So if something catastrophic did happen, the weights could not fall and hit anybody down here. So I'm not going to work on that on camera or anything. Just know that I'll get that finished up. So I'm going to go ahead and put the TV in the up position. And I still might make that bar that my neighbor Don suggested, so I could just stand on the ground, start pushing it up, and then hook the bar on it and do it all finished from a standing position. But for now, I'm just going to use the ladder. And here we go. Counterweights really help, because I can just let it sit like that, move the ladder back, and we will continue going up. And it's going to hit the top right there, spin it to my right, get to the channel, go up a little more, spin it back all the way to my left till it stops, and then just lower it just that little bit into the notch. So I've left the TV on just so you can see it up there. You can see the counterweight. When it's final designed, it won't come below the rafters. And here's the 110 wires hanging here, but they're up a ways. That isn't really going to bother anybody. And the audio video wires are even a little higher, so you can't reach them there. So I think that's going to work out pretty good, and I will show you how it comes down. Just the opposite, a little bit of an up push, spin it to my right, bring her down a little in the channel, center it, and now it comes down. Here we go, bottoms out. So one thing I did notice, since it has two ropes for the counterbalance, and one has to go off to the side a little more because they're not just centered under the peak, if I turn the TV this way and I let go of it, you'll see that it's going to spring back. Springs back pretty good, actually past center again, because I let go of it way over here. But it will also spin this way, and I'm going to let go of it softer. So it will stay in that direction. Now, generally you don't really have to do that much. Of course, the projector screen, it just stayed flat anyway. But I do have windows to the west here, so if it is later in the day, a lot of lights coming in here and you get some glare on the screen. So if the sun's coming in this way, the glare straight on, I'm watching from straight back there. If I turn the TV like this, it takes that glare off to the side and you can watch it back there without the glare. So I think the project has really turned out good. Thanks for staying with the video this long if you have. It was probably, between stopping and starting, 2.5 week project, you know, from start to finish, where I went to my buddy's house and we did some drilling and some welding and stuff. And my neighbor Don coming over, and then also the three of us actually working here together for a little bit when I was actually hanging the TV on, because I wanted to do that safely. So I'm very happy with it. Appreciate you watching. Take care.